Hello, everyone, and welcome to this episode of Pod Save Chocolate. Today, I'm really excited to have a couple of very special guests coming from one of the favorite places I have to visit anywhere, anytime in the world, which is Brazil. And joining me today are Juliana Aquino and Arcelia Gallardo, all right, who are, I believe, both coming in from São Paulo today. Is that correct?
Yes.
Yes.
Great. And today, we're going to be chatting about a book that you are two of the co-authors. Now, before we continue, what I do want to say is that there had hoped to have two other people in this call, one of which was Claudia Gamba, a co-author, and Zelia Frangioni, another co-author. But unfortunately, both of them have family medical emergencies that prevent them from joining us today. Right. I have no doubt whatsoever that the two of you are going to be able to do a fabulous job in talking about the book. And I just want to welcome both of you here today.
Thank you, Clay.
Thank you, Clay. It's going to be amazing.
Yeah. So let's just jump into it. I can't, but I do want to remind everybody who might be watching, whether you're on YouTube, LinkedIn, or Facebook, you can go into the live chat in YouTube or on LinkedIn or Facebook into the comments. And if you have questions, right, about anything that's going on here, or you want to ask a question of Juliana or Celia, just put it into the comments. I will get it up on screen and we'll answer the question for you. And I'm taking a look at it, and the layout, is not all that great. So let me get rid of that over the top of my head so that I can see myself. So let's talk about this. This is the title, Onde Cresce o Chocolat. That's about as close as I can get. So Where Chocolate Grows. And the subtitle is the Trita Bar and Bean Bar chocolate scene, as written by women in the business. Is that right?
Yes, absolutely.
All right. So what I want to do is, for people who may not know, Juliana, Tutu was here a couple of weeks ago and he talked a little bit about the history of Baiani and Vale Potomuju. But Arcelia, tell me about your history and why chocolate and why Brazil. So when we say women in the business,
yes,
what's your connection to the business of cocoa and chocolate, cacao and chocolate in Brazil?
Yes, so I am Mission Chocolate, and Mission Chocolate was started in 2014, and it was created in the Mission District in San Francisco, California. That's why it's called Mission Chocolate. And I decided to move to Brazil to learn how to work more closely with cocoa producers, because in California there is no cocoa. And so I moved to Brazil and I started to work closely with cocoa producers just to understand a little bit more of where the actual product came from. And my plan was to be here 4 years, and I'm now on my 11th year of my 4-year plan. And it's really difficult to leave Brazil, as you can attest, Clay, when you visited, that once you are here, really, it's very hard to leave Brazil. And so in the last 10 years, I have opened a factory in São Paulo. I am right now in my chocolate store / cafe. And Brazil has been very good to me and to our product. And Mission Chocolate really is a collection of bars that represent Brazilian history, gastronomy, culture, geography. And so really Mission Chocolate has evolved to really be like a love story to Brazil.
Yeah, I think that's a really important aspect of my understanding of history. And you and I met in the Mission, in the Dandelion shop in the Mission District. I don't remember exactly the year, But I had never put together that connection, that the reason the business is called Mission Chocolate is because of your experience.
We probably met in 2013, which is when I was doing my 1-year internship. My 1-year job at Dandelion was when I met almost everyone in the chocolate industry. And that was 2013, right before I moved to Brazil.
That's great. So I also want to talk a little bit about, we'll get that after we let Juliana talk about her history with Vale Potomuju, formerly the Fazenda Santa Rita, right? And the creation of Baiani. And then I have no idea what is Baiani related to Bahia? And that's where it comes from. So Juliana, please. For those of you who know nothing about you, but the gracious smile you have, you both that, right? Tell us a little bit about, your history with this.
Okay. Hi, everyone. Thank you for being here. Oh, it's amazing. Thank you, Clay, for the opportunity to talk about our book. Well, the history is we have this farm in South Bahia, where is a typical region for cacao in Brazil, a traditional region for cacao in Brazil. My father used to run the farm, and then he passed. We inherited, but he was abandoned for around 13 to 15 years because of witches broom crisis. And Tuta and I started to take the administration in 2013. So we restarted to run the farm. We renovated everything, including the cacao plantation. And by the time it was the bean to bar movement was starting to run the world, to be a little famous around the world. So we decided to renovate the farm already with the plan of producing specialty cacao. And so that's when we got in the bean to bar and, of course, tree to bar business in the world. So we started to learn a lot about it. But my history before it is music too. I used to be a singer, a professional singer. But then when we start with cacao, we can't, stop anymore. It's just a dream, right? Arcelia already said that she can't leave Brazil. And it's like cacao and chocolate. It's like this. So it's a dream. It's been a dream since we started. We started to make chocolate to test the quality of our beans. We actually, with that, we decided to have a chocolate company too, because it became really well. So we sent to the Academy of Chocolate Awards, and we got the first time we got awards for the 2 bars we sent. So we were like, you know what, let's have a...
You were hooked. You were hooked. You got recognized and you were hooked. So I want to, so Arcelia, I know that Juliana's background is as a singer. So bossa nova, I am guessing a little bit of it in there.
Yeah, used to be Axé music, like the very dancing music from Bahia, but then bossa nova.
Yeah, okay. My background is in the fine arts as a photographer. So Arcelia, did you have a background in food? I mean, when you went to Dandelion, you knew that you were going to Brazil and spend some time in Brazil setting up a chocolate business, but what is your background that got you interested in chocolate to begin with? Because I don't know that.
Yeah. So just also back to Juliana's singing career. We have her 2 albums at the cafe and we play them on loop.
Oh my God. Yes. We don't play at our cafe here. I don't know why.
You can find them on iTunes and on Spotify. They're really good. And so before I moved to Brazil and before I did my 1 year with Dandelion, I had a chocolate store in Berkeley, California, where the focus really was to showcase Latin American flavors in chocolate. So my focus really was desserts, bonbons. It was more on the sweet side, but not so much focused on the actual chocolate side. And then before that, I had a normal job with marketing in a culinary school. So I never thought you could have a job making chocolate. It was just like a fantasy thing. And so my trajectory really was go to normal college, have a normal degree, have a normal job. But I just got sucked into the world of culinary arts, specifically chocolate.
Mhm. And I think, if I think about some of your focus when it comes to the flavors of your bars, like one of them is the Romeo and Julieta. I mean, what you're doing is you're taking classic Brazilian desserts and reinterpreting them in a chocolate bar, right? And this is in addition to the single origin ones you're doing, and unusual ones like Dois Rios, right? Which is a fun bar as well.
Right. I think that when I think back of like, oh, I have no idea how I got into chocolate, but if you really look at everything I've done even with my college career and afterwards, it explains thoroughly why I make chocolate the way that I make chocolate. So number one, I am pretty fascinated with the culinary arts world, with restaurants, recipes, with cooking, but also in college, my minor was Latin American literature. And so I would read, every book that was created by Latin American authors. And also we spent quite some time reading the letters that Hernan Cortés and Christopher Columbus wrote back to Europe while they were exploring. And so really for me, all of that culminates in a lot historically, emotionally, and even with me and with my family. I was born in California, but my family immigrated from Mexico. And so really creating a recipe around all of that really explains the way that I make chocolate the way I do. So when I moved to Brazil, I didn't want to come in and commandeer what my thought of chocolate was, which was a very, American version still. But I wanted to make sure that I used Brazilian ingredients and that I paid homage to Brazilian ingredients, and that I really was creating a product that could be internationally appreciated using what grew around where I was, which is São Paulo specifically, but really Brazilian as well. And so Mission Chocolate, in a sense, is really about trying to teach people that culturally you can make good products where cacao grows, which isn't really something that people think about, right? Because not so long ago, maybe 40 years ago, chocolate was really only being made in Europe, in Canada, and the United States. People that grew cacao couldn't make chocolate. And I really wanted to be a part of that shift and of that change. And so Mission Chocolate really is a little bit of all that.
I just want to let everybody know that I didn't plan this, but this is the perfect segue into the book, right? To go through it. And, for me, I'm always a guest in a culture. And I have to say that I have been made to feel incredibly welcome on every single one of my trips to Brazil. I was invited into your home, Juliana, for my first trip in 2017, and there I had the opportunity to judge the first Premio Bean de Bar Brasil, which was organized by Zélia Frangioni. And for me, I think one of the more useful aspects of the book, I mean, it's not available in the United States. And if you don't speak Portuguese, you're going to have to read it through your phone in order to understand. But there is this fabulous timeline beginning on page 114, which sets out the last couple of decades. So it goes all the way back to the founding of Scharfenberger in 1996. And then a discussion of the first one of the Chocolate festivals by Marco Lessa in 2009. And the founding of Chocolat by Claudia Schultz, and Ama by Diego Badaró. And, if people may know the name Ama, but if you're not in Brazil, you do not know who Claudia Schultz is. But going to the Salon du Chocolat in 2010, João Tavares, who is a bean grower, whom I met in 2010 in Paris. And then the founding of Modica in 2012, Mission in 2013, Chocolatras in 2014, right? All of it is here. And I wish that somebody had the foresight, right, here in the American craft chocolate industry to put together a timeline like this of the first decade, because it doesn't exist. But I do take a look at this, and I look at what's going on in this list, and I don't want to spend like too much time about it, but let us actually go through. I mean, all of the authors in this book are women, right? And it is definitely, women in business, por mujeres de negocio. Why is that important, and specifically with respect to Brazilian cocoa and chocolate? Juliana?
Well, I think we've been noticing that lots of businesses in cacao and chocolate here in Brazil are really run by women. So we wanted to have like a feminine, a girl's look, a girl's feeling about the business. Um, actually Clay, this started a little before the book. We started to try to put out a magazine that was going to be published every season. I mean, 4 magazines a year, and then we would reunite all the content and make a book in the end of 2 years. So that was the first plan, and for this plan it was already women. So we started to discuss all the content that we have in the book today, and even before, between women only. And we had this feeling about the feminine look, the feminine outlook, over all these aspects of the business. And we found that so interesting. And then we said, you know what, let's write a book only with women, because this is important. For example, we changed in Vale Potomuju, we changed the fermentation, the post-harvest processes to women management. We have 2 women running the post-harvest processes in the farm. And we noticed that the observation and the feeling about all the changes, in the cacao, the smell, the tastes, not the smell, the aromas, the taste and everything were so much noticed and registered, and everything changed so much after we had women in this part of the post-harvest process, that we do have a different view about the whole business. So we thought it was interesting. That's why we wanted just women, and really good women in Brazil doing the service. I mean, I think it's good. It was a good idea.
I think it's a fabulous idea, and Arcelia, I'm going to let you jump in and talk about that. Then there's a comment that I want to get to, which is that there is a larger global initiative around women in cocoa and chocolate. It's actually called WINC, WINCC, right? So it's an attempt to provide a community which is different from the larger community. I think that's a fair way to put it. Not being a woman in cocoa and chocolate, far be it from me to do that. But I know all but one of you in person. I may have met Mariana Bueno, and unfortunately, I just want to let everybody know that Claudia Gamba, who's a partner with Rogério Camé in Mestizo Chocolate, and I have been to their farm, Fazenda Bonanza, in Bahia as well. Who is going to join us today, but as a parent, has unfortunately a child home sick at the last minute, who's apparently unwell enough that there is a visit to the pediatrician today in order to make sure that everything is okay. I completely and totally understand that. And as imagine, Juliana, you were going to be here with Tuta, and you had a similar kind of family medical problem going on as well. So, and Arcelia, I know that you have, last I looked, 2 beautiful children, right? When I met you, and 3.
This crazy woman.
Totally miscounted. All right, I've misremembered. But Arcelia, as a chocolate maker, right, in Brazil, and being one of the first, right, how important has it been for you within the larger Brazilian community that you have this group of other women in the business, right, as a source of support for the work that you're doing. I'm imagining again that it is important, right? But again, I'm not entirely certain. I know culturally, in Brazil, it's very different from here in the United States. So how does that work? Especially because you're not a native Brazilian.
Yeah, so
She
I think
thinks
we,
she is.
I'm sorry?
She's
I
here for so long, she thinks she is a native
Oh,
Brazilian.
she's a naturalized Brazilian.
I love farofa, so I think once you love farofa, you're Brazilian.
Is that what it is? Oh, I can tell you that I just had some of the most amazing farofa when I was on my trip in 2017. I'll
That
find the
is
photo.
amazing.
I'll find the photo of it and share. But Arcelia, if you want to go in and answer that question, and then I'll
Yeah.
get the comment up on the screen.
So when I was living in California with Dandelion, my best friends in chocolate were all men. So, Greg, D'Alessandre, Ryan from Parliament Chocolate, Mike from 24 Blackbirds, like the list, and obviously the other two owners of Dandelion are also men. And just on and on, right? So whenever you see photos of us in 2013 in San Francisco, it's like me and then, 5 guys here, 5 guys there, of Dick Taylor, right? And so on. And so when I came to Brazil and I realized that there was a lot of women making chocolate, I thought that was a very important fact, and that it was something that I really wanted to focus and concentrate on, because it's not that women are more important, right, than men when making chocolate, but it's just that women have less of an opportunity, like in any other field, to actually hone this industry, or hone this craft, right? And so I really wanted to make sure that when we made the decision to write a book, that we really only invited women authors to be a part of this, because not only is there not a book written in Portuguese on how to make chocolate, just like there isn't one in many other languages where cacao grows, but there isn't a book written just from women. And so that fact for me was just really, really important in order to get this done.
What I do want to talk about is, right, so where chocolate grows. So, and the way I have read this is that it is focused on the Brazilian audience. So what is it that the average Brazilian knows about the history of cacao and chocolate in Brazil, right, that this book focuses on? So, for example, if you travel around the streets of São Paulo, and I'm thinking back to 2017, right, you will see many Copenhagen, right, and they got purchased by somebody, so they're now no longer independently owned, as I recall. You have Cacau Show, which is like the source of the largest individual fortune in chocolate that I'm aware of, right? And there are other things, but it seems to me that that's the conception that most Brazilians have. But again, Maria Brigadeiro, Gourmet Brigadeiro, which is an interesting concept. So how does this book address the gap that you all perceive between the chocolate that the average Brazilian runs into as they go down the street, and what it is that you're trying to do in the specialty bean to bar, tree to bar world in Brazil?
I was thinking, why you building the question, I was thinking about, our general public, Clay, is not different than the US. I mean, there are some people that really believes that chocolate is a Belgian thing and Swiss thing. I mean, we do probably know that Brazil grow cacao, but the relation about cacao and chocolate, that is been made in Brazil lately after the 2000s, it's very small. General public don't know much, So that's one of the main reasons that we decided to have this book. At least we have a register, that we've been doing some really nice movement about the recognition. I usually say that we are in the fourth generation of chocolate, right? The first one with the Mayas and Aztecs, then the second generation in Europe, the third generation, the industry, right, with the bar, and now we are the fourth generation of chocolate that is bringing back the purity, the sustainability and the social justice for the chocolate, and so there are a few people that really know about this fourth generation of chocolate, and then the book is there because of this, this lack of information here and everywhere. And we do have a company, not a company, a government. Just to clarify and just to bring some hope, we have the FIEB, which is like the Industry Federation of Bahia, that is interested in translate this book for English and French. As soon as sooner than we did, hope. So there is a desire of having this translated.
I think that's a great goal to search for, and happy to assist and happy to promote however it is that I can. So for Arcelia,
did I answer your question? Did I answer your question?
Yes, you did.
If I didn't, please, Arcelia.
No. So I want to get Arcelia's response to it before I jump in, because I have something that I want to say to amplify it. But Arcelia.
So I think specifically for this group of women that we worked with, it wasn't so much like what do women have, right, that's special, that makes things different. It's more along the women that we chose. So we were very deliberate on making sure that we chose chocolate makers, bean to bar, chocolate makers, tree to bar, that we chose chocolatiers, and that we chose a chocolate blogger, an academic, right, and like a teacher. And so it's really the only book, whether in any language in the world, that is written by authors that come from every spectrum of the chocolate industry. So
expertise.
A chocolate maker is not going to, so there are books written by chocolate makers, right? And they talk about the farm and the processing and the history. They're not experts in that. Just like the farmer is not an expert in chocolate maker. And just like, the farmer is not an expert in tasting, which is what our blogger brings here, is, she defines tasting and aromas and how to taste at home just for a normal person. And so, and then none of us are experts in the history of chocolate, which is where we brought in the professor. And so it's really the only book that takes on this holistic, real view of every aspect of the chocolate industry.
So multidisciplinary is the way I would approach it.
Yeah,
so I do want to jump in really quickly and give a real quick shout out to Michaela Shoup, who has been a friend of the Chocolate Life forever. She's watching from Brussels today. She gives a shout out and says German as well as English and French, if you can swing it. And then your first comment, Michaela, was you could do that clay. I'm going to assume that you mean create a timeline of the early history. But what I'd like you to do is I'd like you to confirm that if you can. I'm working on 2 books at the moment, as well as starting an autobiography. Yeah. So I'm, so the question becomes, where would I fit a project in like that? But what I did want to point out in answer to your question, Juliana, is that I've had the opportunity to visit Brazil 4 or 5 times. I spent a total of maybe 3 weeks to a month, in a decade right there. But I've had a chance to visit Bolivia on multiple occasions, Peru on multiple occasions, Ecuador, Colombia, and Venezuela, as well as most of the cocoa producing countries in the rest of Latin America. And the point that I think that you're making, Juliana, is that the relationship that the people who live in the country have with cocoa and chocolate is different everywhere. So, for example, I look at Colombia, and it is, in South America, right? It is one of the few countries that has a let's consume chocolate every day in the form of a liquid chocolate in terms of hot chocolate, but they add cheese to it for some reason. I'm not entirely certain why that is. Right, and then I have to go to Mexico, right, and it has a historical connection to the consumption of chocolate as a beverage that doesn't exist in Costa Rica and doesn't exist, for example, in Nicaragua, right? But both places I've spent some time in. And so the question was, oh, yeah, it turns out that the average Brazilian consumer, even though they live in a country that historically, I mean, if we look at the amelinado cacao, which is grown all over West Africa at the moment, it originated in the state of Pará, right? And people are unaware of that connection and that. So I wanted to go there, but I did want to jump Arcelia and talk about on the page for today's episode. Let me go here so I can get all of you in. The page for today's episode, I linked to my photo blog on my trip to Brazil in 2017. And I talk about visiting this restaurant, Espaço Beija-Flor. Right? So here we are, and I call it the single best meal I have ever had traveling for cocoa and chocolate in 18 years. And it is true. And so this is the place, and here's the drink with the caipirinha inside of this hollowed out cacao pod, and here is the farofa, right? And at this point, it was probably the first time that I had a non-hotel version of a farofa, or a non-restaurant version of farofa. But and at this point, I go, oh my gosh, this is absolutely amazing. So you're telling me this is the point at which I became a Brazilian, when I had a chance to get this farofa. I am totally down for that. And I'm going to go back to that view and just let everybody know is that this is the photo blog from my trip to Brazil in 2017. Juliana, you and Tuta were with me when I was at Fazenda Sagrana, when we had a chance to go visit.
Those are Valmir's feet.
Valdir. And so here's Rogério. I was at the factory in São Paulo. Here I am judging the 20s of the first Premio, Vinho Bar Brazil. I am going to be judging this year's Premio. So Zélia has already asked me to do that. I'm going to be doing that again. It was fabulous. For me, tasting all of these chocolates anonymously in 2017, right? And then being able to do the judging again in 2020 or 2021, I forget which year that I did, just seeing the amazing change in just quality is such an elusive term, but you could taste it in the cacao, right? From 2017, there were defects in the cacao, which I think where many people looked at Brazilian cocoa and said, it's defective. There's just something about it. But 5 years later, 6 years later, all of a sudden, oh my gosh, the cacao is no longer, right, a real issue in doing it. So, I mean, that's been I have been really, really fortunate to have had an opportunity. Arcelia, this is you. I remember we're pushing a stroller with one of your children in it through, I forget.
Beco do Batman.
Yeah,
through the neighborhood. This is you. Unfortunately, Zélia wasn't able to join us today, but this is Zélia Frangione. This is Claudia Schultz. Anybody, if you ever get through São Paulo and Brazil and generally, you think that graffiti, it's wall art. I mean, it's just insane just how fabulously beautiful, right, the wall art is in São Paulo, in addition to other things, including fabulous markets, right? Fabulous nightclubs, right? So went out dancing and like amazing Brigadeiro. So here we are at Maria Brigadeiro. Here we are at Ama when it was open in São Paulo. I mean, it's just an amazing place to go. I just wanted to share that with everyone. Just I still have a valid travel visa for Brazil, and I'm hoping to get there at least one more time before it expires. So I do have a quick comment. I haven't read it. So Keith Ayub, who's a contributor to the Chocolate Life, he's been writing about heavy metal contamination, right? there's so much attention to knowing where your food comes from, overused phrase, in his opinion, but no one thinks about chocolate that way, perhaps because it's seen as a treat, so it matters less. Glad to see a book like this, and high time women in chocolate get their due. Absolutely, Keith. I believe that's very, very much the case. So one question I have is, how's the book doing? Right? You know, your publisher probably had expectations for how this would sell, and I'm certain that you guys have expectations for it. Right? How is the book doing in Brazil?
So we actually chose to have 100% control of our future and our book. So we self-published, and it belongs to us 100%. So all of us that have stores in São Paulo sell it at our store. So I sell it here in my cafe. I sell it online, and it does well. Everyone that wants to learn about chocolate, there's really only one book for us to recommend. There is no other book in Brazil to recommend on how to make chocolate.
Yeah, and we do. It's doing well because the first printing, right? Is this the first print? It was a small number, and it's almost sold out. I mean, I have some, like, maybe, I don't know. Everybody has some, so it's been a very short time, but we didn't expect. We actually. Clay, this is important. We have to sell. We have to have our money back. Of course, we have to have everything. But the main goal for this thing is to have a register of the scene, exactly how it says in the title, the scene in Bahia right now, or in Brazil right now, because we. I don't want to say. I don't want to look. I don't. It's a bad word. My English is bad, but like I don't want to seem arrogant or anything like this. But Brazil in this time of the chocolate timeline in the world, Brazil has been really, really in a very nice position. I mean, we've been so far in the research and in all the academic everything and testing and agronomically everything has been so developed, and we have a register of this moment for people to understand and pay attention to Brazil.
So I have to comment on that in a similar kind of way. So I was fortunate to have a publisher come to me in 2006 and say, Clay, do you want to do a book? And so I had a book published in October of 2007. That was the first book to look at chocolate the same way people were looking at wine and beer, right? As a food. And so I understand, I could, am I arrogant to be able to recognize that it was an important book at its time, and it has had an influence because a lot of the fourth generation of chocolate makers, right, grew up on that book. And it's a very different book from, for example, the Dandelion book, Marcelia, which is focused on process, right, and things like that. So I think it's really, really important to be aware, right? I wasn't conscious of this in 2007 when my book was published. I was just, hey, I have a book published, I got to go on the Oprah Winfrey show. Yay, what does that mean? Right? But I wasn't aware because of how young everything was, right? Just what it might mean for the community. And I'm happy that, at a 25,000 unit first print run, right, and it sold out for the most part. So I'm really happy about that. And so I do want to say it's really important that you, as a group of authors, understand that aspect of what this book does, right? It says, here's where we are. Here's the state of the business in Brazil. And I hope that there will be, if not a 5th anniversary book, a 10th anniversary book, right? So where you can go and look back and you can say, this is what we thought, and this is how things have changed, and here are things that are good, and all that kind of stuff. I just really want you, if there's one thing that I didn't understand, right, around when my book was released. It was being present and understanding that, because there was nothing to compare it with. I mean, and the industry was so new. And I'm glad, Juliana, that you feel this way about this book. I'm glad, Arcelio, that you and the rest of the group feel this way about your book, and that you embrace it rather than shy away from it. I just think it's really, really cool that you have that awareness. So I also want to say to another comment from Michaela from Brussels, totally agree with you, Juliana. She was very impressed. So absolutely, let's go and work on that. So
there is something, if I may, there is something interesting about the book that I think we should. It's like, it's not only a book to read. I mean, there is a lot of content and very good content, but also, it's a book to see. We made like a mix of that center. Books that you have lots of beautiful pictures. We made like also a book to see.
A coffee table book. Coffee table book.
Yeah, coffee table book. So it's like a mix of everything. So we have like a very nice, how can I say, how do you say, Arcelia? Sorry, the work made for it by that girl.
Não, fala em português.
A menina que fez a diagramação do livro, the design. All the
like infographics.
The infographic, we made like a very
visually appealing.
Yes. So it's like besides the content that is really dense and really serious, we have like a very nice presented book.
I will say that one of the advantages that you had, because among you had the resources to exert total control, self-published, right, is that when I think about Discover Chocolate, even though I had final editorial control over the words, right, I didn't have final editorial control over the title, right, and I didn't have final editorial control over the way it looked. And there are aspects of it that I wish that I could completely change, right, just from hindsight. But it's also a very ambitious book in the sense that what you want to do is you want to introduce people to chapter 1, capítulo 1, is you want to introduce people to cacao, even though we're Brazilians and we probably see cacao pods maybe in the marketplace, depending on where I live. And so there's a familiarity, but there's not really that understanding of history, the production in Brazil, produção cacau no Brasil. So, you have this, it's a balance of words and pictures. It's not too picture heavy. It's not too word heavy. It goes and it flows naturally, right? Within each chapter and from chapter to chapter. If there's something that I, could just claim is that, for example, there's a fabulous picture on page 18 of a farmhouse, right? I don't know where that is. I would love to know where that farmhouse is. Is it at Vale Potomuju? Is it at Bonanza?
Yes.
All right.
Yes.
Well, I would, do a shout out and, let people know.
It's the employee's house. It's the avenue that we have. I mean, not the avenue. Yeah, the avenue for the employee's house.
Just so one of the things that I try to do now, right, and it's one of the reasons why I shared my photo blog, is that I want to show that I've been there. I want to show that I've thought. You're almost never going to see a picture of me in anything. But what I'm doing is I'm personalize it. I'm saying I have a connection with this place. I have a connection with these people. And I've made the connection oftentimes through my stomach by having had, fabulous culinary adventures. I think, Arcelia, the day that you and Zelia and I had an opportunity to, push your daughter, right, on a cart through Bella Vista, I think, where it was, and then have lunch at that seafood restaurant. and then to go. All of these things just, are part of,
Vila
not just
Madalena.
I'm sorry?
Vila Madalena.
Madalena. Right. Are what I use to let people know about my connections to places. And so even though there are some places where you do make those connections in the book, I wish you would make more of them. Right. So this is my farm, or this is my factory, or this is someplace like that. You can let people know. I know that Mariana Bueno is at the University of São Paulo, and she, like Luciana Montero, are on the education research side more than so.
Consultancy.
Luciana is at ARA Cacau. But again, the connections there are ones that I would like to see, not just as observers, right? But really putting, really nailing the point. It's too aggressive a word. Really, putting a stamp on things that, yeah, this is ours, and what it is that we're doing. Because it's just a fabulous introduction. It doesn't go too deep into the process. For example, are these at Bonanza or are these at Vale Potomuju?
The Vale Potomuju down
At the bottom? So I don't
bottom.
need an answer. I don't need an answer right now, but I'm going through this and I'm going, I would really like to know. But you go from, cacao on the farm and an introduction to that, to the process of making chocolate. And you provide photographs which are not necessarily the kinds of photographs that I see every other place. So I like that, and want to just encourage, more of that personalization. And then we get to confeiteria, right? I'm hoping I'm pronouncing that properly.
Yeah, confectionery.
Yeah, confectionery.
Yeah.
My, like a lot of chocolate books are the history of chocolate, an introduction to cacao, and recipes, right?
Yes.
And usually, as you pointed out, Arcelia, is the individual who's writing the book might be an expert in one of those things, but is rarely an expert in all of those things. And it often turns out to be a My Life in Chocolate with some recipes, or My Life in Chocolate with a little bit of history plus some recipes. And one of the nice things about this is that you're confectioners, you're chocolate makers. So Ghislaine Galette, I know her more, I think, for her confections than I do for her bars, right? If I recall. And she made, I don't know, did Mestizo make a jabuticaba bonbon? I know I've had galettes, right?
Oh, galette.
Yeah.
Galette.
So,
yes.
Yeah. But, these are recipes that are capable of being produced in the typical Brazilian kitchen, I'm guessing, using the resources that they have on hand.
Yes.
There's a list of the different recipes. So bombom cremoso a leche, so it's a creamy bonbon with milk, right? There's an orange with honey, and then the brigadeiro. So when I think of, like Peru, why are they trying to turn cacao growers in the middle of the Amazon into bean to bar chocolate makers? I'm going, why don't they take the chocolate and, make something like a brigadeiro? What is the history of the brigadeiro? Why is it so important to what's going on? And, are there good ones?
All brigadeiros are good. I think from my point of view, right, I'll do the Green Gap interpretation first. So the brigadeiro is not that long ago, right? It came to Brazil when Brazil had access to sweetened condensed milk, right? Which is maybe 100 years ago, less than that. And chocolate, of course, right? And so the brigadeiro is a mixture of sweetened condensed milk, maybe a little bit of butter or heavy cream, and then chocolate or cocoa powder. So it ends up being something like a Tootsie Roll. Like the most American thing I can think of to compare it to would be like a fudge or a Tootsie Roll, which in texture and in flavor a bit as well. But it is easy to make. Every mom, grandma, and aunt knows how to make it at home. It's fairly cheap ingredients, and it can create a lot of little pieces. So it ends up being like a truffle, right? But it's more like a fudge or a Tootsie Roll. And so everyone makes it. Everyone's micro entrepreneurs make them, sell them on the street. You can find them everywhere. Every birthday party has at least 50 to 100 brigadeiros. Every wedding has brigadeiros. It's almost like it's the national candy of Brazil. And we make it here at the store as well. We make 3 brigadeiros, milk, dark, and a sweet corn. And they can be really tasty. They can be delicious. They just have to be made like any other thing with high quality products, right? And so people make brigadeiros because they're easy to make, and they honestly are delicious. Like it's really hard to find a really bad brigadeiro, because even if you're just using cocoa powder and sweetened condensed milk, like it's hard to make that bad. Like generally, they're pretty good. I mean, that's my point of view.
Right. So I have made brigadeiro. I looked at YouTube recipes and figured it out. And I have gone to parties where I know children were, right? And I made an adult version where I added rum to the recipe and didn't cook it entirely off. So here's the adult version. And then I found some little dinosaur like shaped candies. Yeah. And then I rolled the kids' brigadeiros in the dinosaur shaped candies. Yeah. Oh, and I saw a version of these when I was in Belize in 2007. But I think that in addition to easily available ingredients and very, very easy to make, especially if you've watched your grandmother and your mother make them, they are also shelf stable, right? So they do not require refrigeration. And so they're really, really good. And in that respect, so it makes sense in a hot climate, right, that you do not require them to be refrigerated.
And
I'm sorry?
It was a recipe that was sold by a woman that was in the campaign of a brigadeiro. Is a brigadeiro a name?
Brigadier General.
Brigadier General. So she was like in a campaign. It was 1947, if I'm not wrong. So she started to make this candies and sell for the campaign. That's how it,
And now you find them at every kid's birthday
everywhere.
Right. And Maria Brigadeiro, which is a chain of brigadeiro shops. I will never quite get the pronunciation properly because I do not spend enough time with Portuguese.
It's perfect.
Thank you very much. You're very kind. Perfecto. That it was, and they're traditionally made with cocoa powder, but Maria was one of the first to, if not the first, to open up a shop saying that we make our brigadeiros with quote unquote Belgian chocolate. And that was the differentiator.
Now there is this new recipe made, it's called gourmet brigadeiro.
Okay.
That is with cocoa powder to help the texture and the right point for the bowling, and chocolate and specialty chocolate. So it's called gourmet brigadeiro. But there are also recipes without chocolate. So there are pistachio brigadeiros.
Oh no, somebody's going to make a Dubai brigadeiro. Oh, if they haven't already.
That you can imagine, orange, lemon, whatever you think about, it just mixed with condensed milk, and then you have a brigadeiro.
There's one that is pink that is called like insect feet. Like that's bicho de pé. So it's like, it's called like, translates to like insects of the feet. I don't know, but it's pink and it's made with pink gelatin. And so that's why it's pink, but it doesn't have chocolate. So there are a lot of different types of.
And it doesn't have insect feet in it. And it doesn't have insect
maybe
feet.
It does, maybe it does.
Maybe it does. Oh, so we're talking about cochineal, that color, that particular red color. Right. So before we go, because we're in the last couple of minutes, right, I just want to step back a little bit. So for people who aren't aware, there is, Brazil suffered a major setback in their cacao industry in the late 1980s through what is thought to be the deliberate introduction of witch's broom into the country. It wasn't there beforehand, and all of a sudden it's all over the place. And the cacao industry, the production dropped to 20% of what it had been in the past, right? And that it's really only recently, within the past 5 years or so, that production has recovered, right? And that the specialty cacao market and specialty chocolate has really taken a foothold, right? But there's a connection between that event and the Mata Atlântica and this system of agroforestry, which is known as Cabruca, right? So how important is it to you, Juliana? You know a farm, right? Your family farm was like decimated, right, by the witch's broom. How important is that whole legacy of the Mata Atlântica and its role as the second largest rainforest in South America that nobody's ever heard of before, right?
Yes.
How important it is to you and, Arcelia, thinking, for example, of Dois Rios, that bar, right? And its celebration of that aspect of Brazilian cacao culture. How about this is the topic that I want to end this episode on, because for me, who doesn't have that connection directly, right? It's really, really fascinating, because when I was in 2017, everybody was talking about the Mata Atlântica, the Mata Atlântica, the Mata Atlântica, and Cabruca, and that's the way to bring back, right, the Atlantic rainforest.
Well, the remains that we have from the original Atlantic forest now are 9%, what we used to be. So, and part of it is under, cacao is under the part of it, which is called, the system is called Cabruca. Cabruca is like, you you have a plantation of something, of cacao, but you're not gonna bring the forest down, because we need some shade. Cacao needs some shade to grow when they are babies, as everybody knows. Usually, as banana leaves make this shade. But our ancestors, my grandfather, great grandfather, they used to have this system called Cabruca for the shade. Well, we must say that economically is not the best one. We do have a reduction of profit because of it. Of course, any plantation needs full sun to produce, lots. But for cacao, this study shows that in 20 years, the soil is completely done. The fauna and flora around is gone. So the choice for a Cabruca system in South Bahia, and especially for this traditional agroforest system, is for the sustainability. So we still have the fauna. Actually, there are some species that really, really prefer the Cabruca system than the original forest, because the Cabruca is a little open, so they can see their predators. So some species really love the Cabruca system even better. So we do have we do have this honor of being the guardians of the what used to be full Atlantic rainforest, and also it's a lot better when you get in a full sun production, cacao production, and then when you go to a Cabruca system, cacao production, that you can breathe all the oxygen and all the aspects of a real forest when you are in. So definitely Cabruca is it's not the most profitable economical system for the plantation, but it's definitely the best for sustainability, for it fulfills our souls.
So when people think of Brazil, they usually think Rio de Janeiro, and that's it. Like, there's nothing in Brazil except for women in bikinis dancing on the beach. But Brazil actually
carnival and a big statue. That's all there is, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
And so Brazil has 6 biomes and two of very important rainforests in the world. So the Amazon rainforest, which borders, all those countries on that side of South America. And then we have the Atlantic rainforest, which borders the ocean. And cacao can grow in many parts of Brazil, or many states in Brazil. but it really is all enveloped in the Atlantic rainforest biomes, right? And so the Amazon rainforest, it has its own sense of, international protection, but the Atlantic rainforest has really been taken advantage of. So like Juliana says, we're only left with 9% of what used to be the Atlantic rainforest. So it's very important to support cacao being grown within this rainforest because it really preserves that part of the rainforest. So my idea for creating a chocolate bar that would teach people that there are different biomes in Brazil was my Two Rivers chocolate bar, which uses a cacao from the Amazon rainforest and it uses a cacao from the Atlantic rainforest. And it puts it in the bar, but not blended. So it leaves the Atlantic rainforest on one side, it leaves the Amazon rainforest on the other side. And when it's side by side, you get to see two different chocolates. So you get to taste two 70% chocolates, two different aromas, two different textures, two different colors. And then a person will start to ask questions, why is this different colors? And it's really a gateway to educate someone on the Brazilian geography, but also why is it called Two Rivers, right? So in Brazil, there is a phenomenon that's called Two Rivers in the Amazon rainforest, that two rivers join from many tributaries are coming together until it becomes two rivers. But one river is very heavy in clay and it doesn't merge with the other river, which is known as the Black River. So when you see it together, there you go. So when you see it together, you could be on a boat on this river that looks exactly like that. And then eventually it merges together and it becomes the Amazon River, which is the strongest river in the planet. And so when a customer asks me, oh, why is it called Two Rivers? Why is it two different colors? It's really a way for me to educate people about the rainforest, the Atlantic rainforest, the Amazon rainforest, the Two Rivers. And so it's really used as an educational piece for me on my end. And really it's the first chocolate bar on the planet that has two variety of cacaos that are not blended.
This is genius. It comes from a gringa. It comes from a gringa.
Well, so there are lots of ways to think about it. First of all, is that Zelia wrote an article for the Chocolate Life about that bar, and so what I'm going to do is I'm going to put a link to today's post so that people can read what Zelia had to write about that bar. And I don't know if you know about this, Arcelia, but that Two Rivers phenomenon can be seen in the Colorado River Canyon. When the Little Colorado, which is incredibly silty, merges with the Colorado River south of Lee's Ferry. It's around Havasu. I think it's east. No, whichever direction. It would be east of Lake Havasu. You're in the river, and I've been down the Colorado on a raft. I've actually been in it. So you see this line in the river where it's completely clear on one side. It's completely muddy on the other side. Then you go around a bend in the river, and it's completely muddy for the next couple of until it reaches the lake. It is really, really quite phenomenal. I've had the bar. It's a fabulous bar. And I think, Juliana, one of the great things about chocolate, right, and chocolate in Brazil particularly, is that not only do you have this internal sensibility about flavors and history, right, but Brazil, like many other, Peru, and if I think about the food culture in Peru especially, it borrows from all over the world. And so Arcelia coming in and having this non-traditional sensibility sees an opportunity that you might not see. And that's one of the great things about chocolate culture in general. Yes. So when we get together with people from all over the world and have a chance to share these things, not only do we get to share the individual sensibilities that we all have, but we create a richer sensibility through that sharing. Right? And so before we go, this has been fun. I want to give a quick shout out to Giorgia Martone, who's connected today from Bologna in Brazil, in Italy, I'm sorry, who enjoyed the Two Rivers bar. It was amazing and surprising. So thank you, Giorgia, for sharing that. And then also Keith wants to chime in, who's also at the Two Rivers bar. Interesting idea, very much enjoyed all the complexity. And a woman thought this up. Yeah, so absolutely. So we're a little bit over time. What I want to do, Juliana, I want to give you one or two sentences Arcelia, I want to give you 1 or 2 sentences to sum this up, and then I'm gonna take us out. So, Juliana, anything you'd like to say to close out this episode?
Well, thank you so much for everything. I couldn't say nothing better than we need some more space in the internet to talk about chocolate and cacao. And you are giving us this, and the book is part of this plan of talking more about chocolate and cacao in the world. And I'm sorry to go back to the first question you asked me, but Bayani is the name of a god, a religious god from the African religion called Candomblé, where the Africans bring to Brazil when they were slaves here. And I wanted to have a Yoruba, which is the language from these Africans, or a national indigena, or any kind of word, or any kind of bird or wood from Brazil to name the chocolate. And then we find this Baiani, this guide, that is very close to Bahia, Baiani. So that's why we chose Baiani for the bar. And thank you very much, Clay. And whatever you need from Brazil, just one little thing more. We chose to have like this timeline in the end, talking about different brands, different names, because we chose not to have any during the book. So we didn't mention any names, any brands, or any kind of specific characteristic of anybody during the text. So we did everything at the timeline. So we put the names of the very important, characters of the chocolate and cacao scene in Brazil.
So I understand that editorial decision. One thing I might say is that putting captions on the photos.
Oh, the photos, yes.
That's where I'm talking about. I just identifying the photos.
Second edition.
So Arcelia, before we go in, I saw you in person, which was at the Southwest Chocolate and Coffee Festival in Albuquerque now in 2024. You told me that you were putting together a distribution facility in California. Is that correct?
I wanted to. I was trying to figure out how that would work, and I'm still trying to figure out how that would work. My long-term plan is to move back to California, open a chocolate museum, a cacao museum, a store. But like I mentioned, just there's so many projects in Brazil. Like I don't need to leave São Paulo to be successful. I really don't, right? I definitely don't need to leave Brazil to be considered successful. And that just keeps making things harder for me to focus in the US because there are honestly so many great things here. And so it's still in the plans. It still hasn't happened, but it will.
The only reason why I mentioned it is if you did have distribution in California, the next time you send a shipment, you could have a book or two. And so if somebody wanted to purchase the book, it could be shipped from California.
Right. So we could still ship people books. That's not a problem. I'm going to California in like 3 weeks. And so I can take a whole suitcase full of books, but the books are in Portuguese. And we made this decision purposefully. Like we could have printed the book in English first. We thought that they would have been a bigger market for us if we would have done it in English. But we purposefully made it in a language first so that people that didn't have access to learning about chocolate could first have access to the book. And unlike, everything that happens around the world that is first tailored to English speaking customers, we really wanted to focus on doing the opposite. But I can send you the book. That's not a problem.
Well, Zelia already sent me the book, so I do have it. And, I am happy to say that unlike every other copy of the book that people are likely to get, mine includes inscriptions from each of the authors. So that was so I will treasure that. Before we close today, what I wanted to do was point out just a little bit of homework, which is that for every episode of Pod Save Chocolate, there is a post, right? And this is the post for today's episode. It includes the links about where to go watch the archived episodes. You're watching this now, so I don't know why I'm talking about it. But it does include the links to watch things on YouTube, LinkedIn, and Facebook. And then there is a run of show. And this sort of talks about the topics that I want to talk about. There's the link to the photo blog. I will add the link to Zelia's review or article about the Dois Rios bar. in here. And so there are also links to your websites. So if people are interested in visiting Bayani, Mestizo, unfortunately, Claudia couldn't be here, as we mentioned, and then to Mission. So you had that opportunity to go and do this. And then the authors who are not in the episode, you can go and learn more about them from the links as well. So I just wanted to point out to everybody that this is a resource and that this is the homepage of the Chocolate Life. I produce all of this content, right? Which is supported. What's that? Oh yeah, the photograph of every single one of you. Yay. Do you have that photograph just by itself, right? As a digital version? Send it to me and I will include it on the post. I will add it to the post if you send it to me. It's a great photo, but I couldn't take a good photograph of it from the book. But this is the homepage of the Chocolate right now. I produce all of the content and it is supported by members of the Chocolate Life, but I make it available for free, right, to everyone around the world. You can become a member of the Chocolate Life and support the work that I do. And I will appreciate that tremendously. And with that, that's it for today. I want to thank you again. I would like to have the opportunity to, so I've invited Claudia with Rogério to do something. At one point, if there is an opportunity in the future to also include Luciana or Mariana, at any time, just please feel free to reach out to me. I'm trying to figure out if there's a way through the Associação that I can be there in August for Bean to Bar week in Brazil. I don't think Marco is interested in supporting another trip, but I will figure that out as well. So I'm just hoping that I can get to Brazil. If not this year, then sometime shortly. It occupies a very, very special place in my mind. And I want to say, as I do to close out every episode, if you're working with chocolate and you're not having fun, right, you're doing it wrong. And with all the seriousness and all the other stuff that's going on in the world, I hope you realize that having fun, right, in something like chocolate is really, really important. And Juliana and Arcelia, you've both shared your joy, your passion, your connection, right, and the fun you're having with chocolate with us here today. And just thank you very much for that. Until the next time, everyone, ciao.